people call it a village in the city. It's very twee, I know, but it's low rise, it's right near the city centre. It's got cobbled streets, it's got small jewellery outlets, small friendly independent local pubs, restaurants, bars, that kind of thing. So it's, as a resident, it's a really nice, welcoming, warm kind of place to live. In terms of business, I run a property agency, so the more residential property that is created around here, either by conversion or by new build, then the more work there is for me in that sense. Bringing the two of those together, although economically always the best thing to have is stack them high, small, actually because of my residence position, I also don't want that to happen. So there's a nice halfway house there that I want to encourage more residential property, but I want to encourage the right kind of residential property that then leads to a very vibrant, active community, lots of people constantly wanting to better the area. So
the jewellery quarter for me is, someone once quipped to me, so I'm probably breaking copyright or something, but they said up and coming since 1846. So, and I think that probably captures it quite well. It's an area in a state of flux, both in terms of the businesses that are located here and a once again growing residential population. It's an area rich in history, and I think it is probably the most authentic part of Birmingham city centre, and A, I want it to stay that way, and B, I want it to become the place that when international travellers, you know, when you go to visit a city somewhere in the world, everybody says, well, you've got to go and check out this area that's away from downtown. I think that's what the jewellery quarter should be for Birmingham.
It's an area of the city. You mentioned actually that, you know, the history. What's nice about our group that we've gathered for the neighbourhood plan is actually everyone has a slightly different view on this historical aspect, whether that be preservation, conservation, innovation that just works with it but builds on top of it, and that's both figuratively and actually physically building on top of it. So it's actually nice that we're not all completely trying to only do one thing with it. We've got everybody pulling at this concept so that history will be respected whatever happens, but it actually won't allow the area to stand still. We won't, I mean, you said you don't want it to change, but actually I think you don't quite mean not change at all.
Oh, no.
Matt doesn't mean stagnant, but he also means we don't want to lose it. Mm-hmm. We're quite keen to keep that history and that tradition there in whatever format that actually takes, that enables us to go from current levels of residents to, we've got a target of around about 10,000, so that's almost doubling current residency. Mm-hmm.
There's a constant tension in Birmingham. We've got this tradition in the jewellery quarter of the buildings and the heritage. The other Birmingham tradition, of course, is slash and burn development. So it's stopping that from happening in the jewellery quarters.
We're seeking to complement some of that, mm-hmm. because some of it will need relaxing, but other things need tightening up. We need to make life easier for the council planners to actually either embrace a scheme or throw a scheme out. But it's never been an easy area in the beginning, because, like Matt says, actually since 1840s, I think in the 1840s it was actually playing fields, and then it became like industrial area and then residential area and then back to industrial. It's changed so much that actually it's very difficult when people say, oh, we want to keep it the way it's always been, because there is no way it's always been. We are approximately 2 or so months from submitting to the council prior to them, so that they can then check through everything, give it its initial stamp of approval. It would then come back to us for the formal public consultation before it then goes to referendum. So our timeline takes us to referendum late autumn, early winter.
We've got a first complete draft that's out there. There's still gaps in it. So what we're doing is looking to fill those gaps, and then issue a kind of a pre-final draft so that we can get feedback and send that to the council for their.
Yeah. We're in the complicated stage where a number of different paths have all come together at the same time. Very chicken and egg stage, because certain things couldn't really start before something else started, except the second thing couldn't really start before the first thing started. So we've got into the final draft, and having to obviously then make sure that the community are aware of that final draft, at the same time as having the SEA then introduced by the council and running that screening alongside, which may throw up more issues that may then have to be woven in. So it's slightly messy time, and we're all spinning plates to make sure that happens. And of course, as you know, it's voluntary, so the entire team and all of us thankfully are in different kinds of industries. So some people, when it's really busy at work, for others it might be quieter. So we seem to cope quite admirably, I would say.
Yeah.
Can't wait for it to finish.
Yeah.
We're so entrenched in it, aren't we?
Mm.
And I don't think anyone who's that entrenched would dip out now. We're on the home run, basically.
Okay.
I mean, you started this in 2011.
It was first mooted in 2011. We seriously got the ball rolling in 2013 with first proper bits of engagement. The issue, or potentially the issue with urban neighbourhood plans, is that it's more difficult to coalesce around a single issue, whereas a village neighbourhood plan the neighbourhood plan is the answer to, we need more affordable housing for our kids, or we've got a flooding issue, or we want some playing fields, or whatever. Whereas we had to take a step back, and instead of saying, right, we're going to have a neighbourhood plan to address this thing, it was, we've got lots of things we want to address. A neighbourhood plan is potentially the answer. Let's go out and find out what we want to address first, or what the most pressing issues are, because we won't be able to do everything. So we had to get that ball rolling in first, and establish what the businesses and residents wanted to tackle, and had an appetite to tackle, because everybody will stick their hand up and go, this is a terrible thing, and then say, well, do you want to do something about it? And they go and throw their hands up in horror and say, no, I'd much rather do this thing instead. So if people are interested in it, they'll spend time doing it. So
it's fair to say that the initial thing, because there's always an issue, a particular challenge that perhaps even just starts that conversation down the pub one night. The initial challenge was, there are so many beautiful buildings here that are not being used. And that was the start of the neighbourhood plan discussion, I guess. But what comes out of that is the more you look into the reason why those buildings are as they are, the more complicated that becomes, because it isn't a case of just, for even as simple as let's raise some funding and do something with them. There are just so many different reasons why those buildings are empty or not being used. But out of exploring that idea came, because it's such a large area, people just have views on how they would like the lifestyle to be, that the buildings are one part of that puzzle that makes a lifestyle in the community here. So that's where we had one idea, and other things started to tumble out of it, which again is the reason why I think it's such a complicated plan. Because there are so many residents and so many businesses, and they both have very different reasons. Pretty much like I explained at the very start, there are two different hats people wear. And when they're a business, they want things to go a certain way, and when they're a resident, they want things to go a certain way. Very rarely do the twain meet.
Well, then there's the third hat of heritage, and that is, I don't know whether any other neighbourhood plans tackling 240 listed buildings, some of them grade 1, some grade 2, dereliction of those listed buildings, the most of the neighbourhood plan area is a conservation area as well, so it's that makes it.